Welcome to Kitchen Table Conversations, a series of short and shareable conversation starters for those of us who have or love and support people with a complicated and beautiful brain. Here's your host, Angela Geddes.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Kitchen Table Conversations. Today, I think that I'd really like to talk about this overall concern that we have around screen time. And I know that that's been a topic around my kitchen table for many, many years. And I thought that I would just talk a little bit about, what some of the recommendations are for people of all ages. And also to just sort of focus on the fact that, sometimes parents feel an enormous amount of stress regarding, what they should and what they shouldn't be doing. And I have been, a helper in this mental health and parenting education and support field for many, many years. And I used to teach parenting classes, and by no means do I have all the answers. I used to love teaching parenting classes because it helped me to keep up on all the research and to, do a lot of reading and get lots of tips and strategies from experts out there. But I also really emphasize the need to use our own common sense and to feel comfortable with the decisions that we're making. And sometimes arbitrary decisions by researchers don't always make as much sense in the real world as we expect. So I can remember years ago working in the early years programs, and the research was indicating that some kids entering school were so far behind in terms of literacy because they hadn't been exposed to reading. And I think the recommendations back then was, an hour a day of reading to our kids, and that kids were like 3,000 hours behind by the time they entered school. And I remember thinking to myself, like, as a busy mom of 3 little kids, how on earth do parents who work full time, who have 2 or 3 kids, have an hour to spend with each of them to practice their reading skills from the time they're born to the time they enter school? So I think that, I am a big fan of books. If anybody knows me, they know that I might have a bit of an addiction. I love reading. I've always modeled reading. My kids have read, and we've dedicated time away every day to spend doing that. However, it is kind of ridiculous to think that everybody in their busy lifestyle, when you're thinking about other extracurricular activities and other life demands that we all have, to be able to dedicate an hour a day is a lot. So again, I think that, what I've always tried to emphasize with people is that we use our own judgment, and also the focus is on quality and not quantity. And even in terms of quantity of time or time spent with our kids. I mean, we all feel pressure, and we all, I don't even like the word busy because I feel it's overused, and there's somehow that seems to be a bit of a badge of honor or some sort of, recognizable character trait if we all are busy, busy, busy. But the bottom line is sometimes our lives can be quite hectic, and we're looking at running kids to soccer and, extracurricular things that we're always engaged in. And, it's really hard to say that at the end of the day, how much time did we actually spend with our kids? And what I used to suggest to parents is, again, it's quality, not quantity. So if you can actually spend 10 minutes where you're looking at your kids in the eye and you're actually dedicating time to them and their needs and learning about what their day is like and what's going on for them, 10 minutes a day is what we know makes a big difference. So it doesn't have to be an hour of quality time with our kids, because if we have 2 or 3 of them, that's just not possible in an evening. So let's just be realistic. So again, today we're going to talk about screen time. And I think some of the previous guidelines around that, where it indicated that there should be absolutely no screen time before kids turn 2, for example, or minimal amounts between 2 and 5 and that kind of thing. I think that we've kind of gone away from the actual amount of minutes and hours that people spend, but let's take a look about some guiding principles. So in other words, let's minimize our use whenever possible. Let's mitigate the risks associated with overuse or content, and let's be mindful around the use screen time use, and let's do some modeling ourselves. And actually this really gives us a good opportunity to do that check-in with ourselves. And I used to do that all the time. Do I want my kids to be doing this kind of thing? So if I don't, then maybe I shouldn't be doing it either. So I should qualify, and I don't want to dispute the evidence here. The new guidance released just last fall still urges no screen times for kids younger than 2 years of age, except possibly video chats with others, and especially during the COVID years. I mean, that's how we communicated. And again, it's hard to define what is screen time, because we all, many of us have been working through our screens, and is that screen time, or is that actually, us interacting in a new kind of way? So I think that's different. But I think, again, in terms of minimizing or mitigating the risk, I mean, screens should be probably the last resort, especially when you're talking about really, really young kids. There are a million things that we could and should be doing, and that one-to-one interaction with our kids is paramount, and so integral in terms of overall learning and academic achievement, but mostly social and emotional learning that takes place, that just simply can't take place in the same way when we're in front of screens. However, if you're busy getting ready for work, and you're getting 2 or 3 kids ready for school, and you've got your 18-month-old that's sitting in the high chair that likes to, listen to Sesame Street while she's learning a little bit about numbers and alphabets and, social interactions while she's having the rest of her breakfast, if that creates, a peaceful learning environment, and it's not actually you doing it, but you're able to do other things, that's not necessarily terrible either. But again, it's about mindful use, it's about mitigating the risks, and it's about using that very intentionally, and not just this passive use of screen time. So again, I don't think that screen time is inherently bad. It isn't, especially if it's used with intention. But I think that, again, if we do our best to be, to sort of naturally decrease the amount that children spend on screens, because it's not necessarily helpful, and it often prevents them from doing other things that can be quite helpful. And in fact, the research is pretty clear that screen times for kids under 2 can be quite harmful. Screen time, or too much of it, can interfere with language development, some pro-social behavior. How do you learn how to take turns? How do you learn how to concentrate on something that's really important to somebody other than yourself if you're just interacting with screens? And some planning and organizing and, that kind of executive functioning development is shown to have, is shown to be delayed with too much screen time. So I do think it's really important for families to have conversations about screen time. And this goes for older kids too. So again, it's not about binary decisions around how much screen time. It's about how are we using it and why are we using it. And I think that's a really important piece too, because sometimes we can get caught up in it. I mean, who hasn't got caught up in Instagram reels? I know I'm guilty of it. And there goes a half an hour or 15 minutes pretty darn quickly. And when we're doing that, other things are not being done. And I mean, I think that's just the bottom line. And yes, we all need to have time to relax and just kind of check out for a little bit. That's good for our mental health too, but it's not necessarily good for our mental health if we're on our social media and surfing the internet without purpose. I think it's really important for all of us to ask ourselves the question, why? And if we can answer that question with good reason. So the example I gave earlier, if we're busy and we're getting out of the house and all the kids are running around and we've got lots going on, and a little person is occupied watching Sesame Street for 15 minutes while you're able to get a couple kids in the car and blah, 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 blah. If that is your purpose, well, then that's just perfectly fine. If you can ask and answer the question honestly and feel good about your answer, it's fine. But sometimes we're doing things to avoid other things, or we're getting caught up in a habit and we're wasting too much time and we're not feeling good. And we can't answer that question, why, with good rational reason and judgment. So I think that's important for everybody to just do that check-in. And that's the kind of conversation that I'm encouraging that comes back to your kitchen tables. So again, it's not about necessarily how much screen time, it's the purpose, it's what is it serving for you? Is it helpful? Is it adding to your day? Is it adding to your kids' day? Is it keeping the peace in some instances? But the last thing we need is for parents and ourselves too to feel more pressure and more guilt to be more than what we're able to be. So again, let's just keep that conversation going and, with less judgment, but more curiosity, and see if we're doing what we all can be doing in order to live our best lives. Thanks for tuning in. Have a wonderful day. Angela.